That faint mix of burnt coffee and the lavender spray our cleaning crew used to hide it. I remember that smell pressing against the back of my throat as I stood in my office, staring at the open folder on my desk. It hadn't been there when I left for my investor call an hour earlier. No one should have been in my space, and yet the soft shimmer of fingerprint smudges on the manila cover told me someone had stood right where I was standing, touching things they shouldn't. Inside the folder were printed screenshots, Slack threads, out-of-context performance notes, a snippet of a frustrated email I'd written months ago during a brutal outage, highlighted in yellow like it was evidence of emotional instability. I felt my stomach drop, slow and heavy, like an elevator descending too fast. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Maybe someone left it in the wrong place. Maybe it wasn't meant for me. But then I saw the label typed at the top of the first page, Leadership Concerns, Draft 3. And beneath it, in small, neat font that made my throat tighten, prepared by Eden Waller, VP People and Culture. Eden, 37, wildly polished, calm in a way people like to call soothing. She had joined us 18 months earlier to professionalize things after our Series A. She always spoke softly, tilting her head in that patient, therapist-like way. She said things like, "We're protecting our culture, and I'm here to support you, and we want you leading at your highest frequency." And I'd believed her, maybe more than I believed anyone else on my exec team. The HVAC rattled above me, loud enough that I almost didn't hear my own breath. I flipped another page, more highlights, more strategic framing, notes implying I struggled with emotional regulation. Phrases like pattern of volatility and concerning leadership drift. Observations about my difficulty maintaining executive presence under pressure, which was wild, considering the woman writing it had cried in my office twice in the past month because her pet launch initiative had stalled. My hands went numb. I pressed my palms against the edge of my desk, grounding myself against the cool wood. My vision blurred for a second, the way it does when your body realizes something dangerous before your brain does. I flipped the final page and saw the part that made my chest lock tight, a bulleted list of recommendations. Temporary leadership realignment. Enhanced oversight from 2 board members, Grace Liu and Thomas Parnell. A suggestion, soft, threaded in corporate diplomacy, that the CEO role may require evaluation as the company approaches its Series B milestone. I felt heat rush to my face. Grace and Thomas were my 2 most powerful investors, and Eden had already been talking to them, feeding them this, preparing them for something, preparing a narrative, preparing my downfall. A Slack ping vibrated across my laptop, Eden, asking if I had a moment to sync before tomorrow's board prep. Her timing was too perfect. I stared at the glowing notification, my pulse pounding in my ears. And that's when I knew she wasn't protecting our culture. She was coming for me. The folder was still open on my desk when I walked into the glass conference room to meet her. That was the part that made my throat feel tight, the knowledge that even as I sat across from her, pretending everything was normal, those sheets of paper were still waiting for me like a living thing. Eden looked up from her tablet the moment I entered. "Hey," she said softly, almost warmly. "You look tired. Long day." Her voice always carried that calm, HR-honed cadence like she was narrating a meditation app. Her blouse was cream silk, perfectly tucked, her curls pinned back with a gold clasp. She always dressed like someone headed to a board dinner, even at 8 a.m. I forced a breath, just a lot going on. She smiled like she already knew the shape of my stress. Of course, that's why I wanted to check in. We should align before things move too quickly. The phrase prickled under my skin, move too quickly. My pulse thudded in my ears. I took the seat across from her, the leather cool against my arms. The office smelled faintly of printer toner and someone's oversweet iced coffee drifting in from the hallway. "When we first met," Eden began, leaning forward slightly, "you said you wanted to scale responsibly, not lose the soul of what you built. Remember that?" I nodded. Flashback hit hard. It was 2 years earlier, a coffee shop in Hayes Valley, the kind with reclaimed wood tables and oat milk everything. I'd been on my 3rd interview of the morning and nearly canceled. She walked in wearing a tailored navy jumpsuit and an easy smile, carrying a leather notebook embossed with her initials. She sat down, tucked a curl behind her ear, and said, "Before we talk about the role, tell me what you're afraid of losing." I remember blinking, surprised. Most exec candidates launched into their resumes, accomplishments, a subtle pitch. Not her. Control, I'd admitted after a beat. And care. I built this to help people work sanely again. Hybrid shouldn't break people the way it breaks companies. She laughed softly. Then we'll protect that together. I should have heard the warning in that but instead I felt relief. She seemed steady, thoughtful, emotionally fluent in a way most operators weren't. Someone who could translate between me and the parts of the company I didn't always understand. Someone I could trust. Back in the conference room, she kept talking, her fingers drumming lightly against her tablet. "We're heading into a sensitive phase. Investors want to feel confident. They've expressed some concerns, nothing dramatic, just signals we should address proactively." My throat tightened. Concerns about what? Her eyes flickered, not away, but inward, like she was choosing the safest angle. "Your leadership load, the stress you've been under. People want to ensure you're supported, that we're maintaining stability." There it was, wrapped in softness, wrapped in care, wrapped in every therapeutic buzzword she wielded like a scalpel. I swallowed hard. "And you've been talking to Grace and Thomas." A tiny pause, barely a breath, but I saw it. She lifted her chin a little higher. "Our investors rely on me to keep a pulse on culture," she said. "It's part of my role." The HVAC above us let out a low rattle, and something inside me went cold. Because hearing her say it out loud didn't clarify anything. It confirmed everything. She'd been building this narrative brick by brick. And I'd invited her in. I spent the rest of that day walking through the office like someone had swapped the air for something heavier. Humid, thick, hard to breathe. People waved, smiled, asked me questions about our upcoming product showcase, and I answered automatically, each word feeling suspended in water. Every time I passed Eden's office, my chest tightened. She sat there serene as ever, tapping notes into her tablet, sipping mint tea, acting like she hadn't just loaded a gun and handed it to my board. By late afternoon, I needed data, something real, something I could hold. I headed to the analytics bullpen, where the hum of our dev servers always made the floor vibrate lightly underfoot. Our lead engineer, Jonah, was debugging a deployment script, headphones around his neck. "Got a second?" I asked. He pushed his glasses up. "Of course, fire away." I pulled a chair up beside him. "Have you noticed anything off, around comms, or team sentiment? Anything unusual coming through people ops that I should know about?" He frowned. "Weird question, why?" "Just checking the pulse before the board meeting," I said, trying to keep my voice even. He turned back to his screen, clicking through Slack channels. "Honestly, not really. Well," he hesitated. "There was one thing. Last week, Eden asked me to fill out an anonymous survey about leadership strain signals." It felt targeted. A chill slid down my back. "Targeted how?" He shrugged. The questions were oddly specific. Stuff like, has the CEO displayed heightened volatility when addressing cross-functional conflict? I literally laughed. I wrote, "No, if anything, she's the calmest person in the room." My throat tightened. Did others get the survey? "I think so, but she said it was routine culture tracking. Why should I be worried?" I forced a smile. "No, just gathering info," but my pulse was unsteady. As I stood, he gently caught my elbow. "I don't know what's going on," he said quietly, "but if anyone's questioning your leadership, they're not talking to engineering." His loyalty almost broke me. "Thank you," I whispered, then pulled myself together and walked out before the emotion cracked through. Back in my office, I shut the door and pulled up our internal Slack logs, not because I expected to find anything obvious, but because betrayal leaves a scent if you know where to look. I filtered channels Eden managed: team well-being, culture ops, leadership feedback. One thread caught my eye: a side channel with her, one of our designers, and a PM. At first glance, it looked harmless, discussion about resourcing. Then I saw a message from Eden. "Let's keep an eye on alignment issues. We want patterns documented before conversations get harder later." Patterns documented. My heart hammered. This wasn't random. She'd been collecting material for weeks. A knock jolted me. I straightened as Aaron, one of our board members, stepped inside without waiting. "Got a minute?" he asked, already closing the door. His expression was unreadable, too smooth, too controlled. Every muscle in my body tensed. "Sure," I said. "What's up?" He took the seat opposite me, steepling his fingers. "I've been hearing some concerning chatter, and we need to talk before tomorrow." The room felt suddenly too small. "About what?" I asked, though I already knew. His eyes met mine with something like pity. "Your stability as CEO." My breath went still in my chest. "Let us be clear," he added quietly. "The board is seriously considering temporary leadership restructuring." The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. "And Eden," he said, "has given us documentation." My hands trembled beneath the desk. Of course she had. And tomorrow, the narrative she'd built would become the board's reality, unless I found a way to shatter it first. The office had emptied out by the time Aaron left, leaving only the faint buzz of overhead lights and the low rumble of the building's ancient ventilation system. Most nights those sounds comforted me, a reminder of stillness after chaos, but now they felt like a countdown. I closed my door fully, turned the blinds so no one could look in, and let myself finally feel it. My hands shook so badly I had to brace them against the edge of my desk. Temporary leadership restructuring. Stability concerns. Documentation. The words echoed like slow, deliberate blows. Eden hadn't just been planting seeds, she'd been cultivating an entire garden behind my back. And Aaron wasn't even the worst option. He was the board's reasonable one. If he was already softened to her narrative, the others were probably further gone. I forced myself to breathe, to think in sequence. When someone builds a narrative, there's always a trail. I just had to find it. I opened my laptop again and went into our People Ops drive, not by clicking through, but by running a recursive search across shared folders. HR teams love tidy hierarchies, but they also love drafts, backups, alternate versions. And drafts always tell the truth before the polish erases it. The first few files were harmless, onboarding materials, compensation grids, but then I hit a folder I didn't recognize, leadership calibration internal. My pulse thudded. Inside were half a dozen documents, dates spanning the last 3 months, each one labeled with versions, V12, V14, V20, V31. I opened the earliest file. My name appeared immediately in the first paragraph. Monitor CEO's stress responses during cross-functional friction. Beside it, highlighted in a sickly green, was a comment bubble. You gather more concrete examples. Ask leads privately. I felt heat rise up my neck. I clicked the next document. More comments, more annotations. A pattern emerging, suggesting I struggled with emotional rigidity, difficulty navigating interpersonal complexity, hesitation in key decision points. None of it was true, or rather, none of it had ever been observed in meetings I'd actually been in. These weren't employee insights, they were storylines. And Eden had been scripting me like a character. My vision tightened at the edges as I kept scrolling. In V31, the latest file, she'd refined the language into something crisp enough to sway seasoned investors. She even added 3 no, not bullets, recommendations, suggesting the board consider transitional executive oversight. A soft sound escaped my throat, part disbelief, part rage. I pressed my fingers into my temples. She wasn't just trying to undermine me. She was engineering a quiet coup. My phone buzzed suddenly, slicing through the silence. I flinched before grabbing it. A text from my sister. "You okay? You sounded off earlier. Call me if you need to breathe." My eyes stung. I couldn't call, not now. Not while my world was actively being restructured without my consent. I typed, "Crazy day. I'll call you later." Then I turned back to the screen. A board coup is like a fire. You don't run around screaming. You move methodically. Identify the accelerants. Contain the spread. Build your counter-evidence. I scrolled until something new caught my eye. A A private note in a side document titled Board Talking Points Draft. It was a single page, short, condensed, deadly. At the top, areas in which Alexis may benefit from temporary support. Below it, only one line mattered. No highlight, no comment, just clean type. Transitioning leadership before series, B may minimize risk. My breath caught. Because right beneath that, in a smaller, lighter font, like someone had meant to delete it but hadn't. Grace agrees. Thomas leaning yes. I sat back slowly. A cold, steady calm began to settle over me. The kind that comes not when danger disappears, but when its full shape finally reveals itself. Tomorrow, they'd try to take my company from me. Unless I moved first. I didn't sleep that night. I lay on my couch in the dark, city lights bleeding through the blinds in fractured stripes, my mind replaying every meeting, every soft smile, every "I'm here to support you" Eden had ever offered. The more the hours passed, the clearer one thing became. I couldn't outtalk her tomorrow. I'd have to outprove her. By morning, my body felt hollowed out, buzzing with a cold adrenaline that made my hands unsteady as I unlocked the office. The place was quiet, too early for most of the team. Just the faint hum of the fridge in the kitchen, the smell of stale croissants someone had left overnight. I went straight to my desk and opened my laptop again, searching for anything Eden might have missed. But she was meticulous. Her drafts were careful, her notes polished, her versions clean. She left no obvious mistakes, no clumsy trails. She was too smart for that. I needed help, but every name I thought of led to a dead end. Anyone inside the company could be compromised. Anyone on the board already had her whispering in their ear. I needed someone outside. Someone who understood people and power and paperwork. And then a name hit me so hard I sat up straight. Marisol. We worked together years ago at a consulting firm. She was the kind of HR operator people whispered about because she saw everything and forgot nothing. We'd lost touch, but she'd once told me, "If the day ever comes when you need the truth cut clean, call me." I pulled out my phone and stared at her contact for a full 30 seconds before typing. "Me, you free. Need help, serious." "Marisol, girl, it's early. But yes, what's going on?" "Me, can you come to my office? Doesn't have to be official, just need you." "Marisol, I'll be there in 45. Bring coffee." I exhaled, something loosening in my chest for the first time since I'd found the folder. 40 minutes later, the elevator dinged and she walked out, dark jeans, a deep green blazer, hair in long braids pulled over one shoulder. She took one look at my face and her expression sharpened. "Who fucked you over?" she asked, dropping her bag onto my couch. I almost laughed, tension breaking just enough to breathe. "I need you to look at something." "Show me." I closed the door fully and pulled up Eden's drafts. Marisol stood behind me, arms crossed, leaning in as I scrolled. Her eyes narrowed as she read the comments, the framing, the highlighted phrases. When she reached the transition leadership before Series B line, she sucked her teeth in a slow, incredulous exhale. "Oh, she bold," Marisol said. "She is very bold and stupid." "Stupid?" I asked, heart pounding. "She's weeks ahead of me." Marisol tapped the screen. This is all inference. No actual incidents, no reports, no timestamps, no direct complaints. She's building narrative without evidence. A board might buy this emotionally, but legally, practically, she's got air, thin air. I swallowed. The board already thinks something's wrong. That's because she's feeding them curated vibes, not facts. Marisol grabbed a chair and sat beside me. But if she's been doing this quietly for months, there will be metadata, version histories, access logs, creation timelines. Every one of these files tells a story beyond the words. My pulse quickened. "You think we can trace it?" "Oh, baby," she smiled, that dangerous, knowing smile I remembered. "Not only trace it, we can prove intentional manipulation." I stared at her, hope flickering for the first time in days. "How?" She cracked her knuckles lightly. "Give me access. And coffee. I'm going to peel back every layer she thought you'd never see." A shiver ran through me. Not fear this time, but electricity. I wasn't alone anymore. And if Eden wanted to weaponize narrative, she just handed me the perfect partner to dismantle hers. The first thing Marisol did was take my laptop gently out of my hands, set it on the desk, and pull her chair closer like she was preparing for surgery. "Okay," she said, cracking open a can of some aggressively caffeinated drink she pulled from her bag. "Walk me through everything, from the moment you smelled bullshit." So I told her quietly, carefully, while the office slowly woke around us. Doors opening, keyboards clicking, someone microwaving something that smelled like leftover curry. But inside my office, the air felt still, like the world had narrowed down to just us and the truth we were trying to excavate. As I talked, she typed, fast, intense, eyes flicking between folders, cross-referencing, opening logs. She muttered under her breath as she worked. "MMHM, I knew it. Oh, she's sloppy. Wow, this is a pattern." The kind of commentary that made my pulse lift each time. When I finished, she sat back. "Okay, here's the situation." She pointed at the screen. "Eden thinks she's subtle, she's not. See these files? The timestamps don't match the internal narrative she presented to the board." I leaned closer. "Explain." "Look," she clicked one version of the leadership concerns doc. "Created late at night, weeks before any of the incidents she references, which means she wasn't reacting to events, she was pro-writing them." She clicked another. "And this one, edited 2 hours after one you had with Grace. She updated language right after speaking with your investor." My breath hitched. She built the narrative before she had the material. "Exactly," Marisol turned to me. "That's not culture work, that's orchestration." A wave of heat rolled through my body, anger and relief and fear tangled together. "How do we prove intent?" "We don't need to prove intent," she said, tapping the screen again. "We only need to prove manipulation of process. HR documentation must be contemporaneous, corroborated, and neutral. Eden S. is none of the three." I swallowed. Will the board care? They will if they understand the legal exposure she's opened them to. Governance risk, fiduciary breach, bad faith performance reviews. She turned fully toward me. They can't use anything she's written. It's contaminated. A sharp knock hit the door. I jumped. Marisol didn't. "Come in," I said, forcing steadiness. Jonah poked his head in, eyes flicking between us. "Sorry, I can come back. Just, you might want to know." He stepped inside, lowering his voice. "Eden S. called a culture alignment meeting for noon. Optional, but she's already pulled 3 leads in early." My heart thudded. She's accelerating. "Feels like it," he said quietly. "People are nervous." "Thank you," I told him. When he left, Marisol turned to me, expression sharpening. "She's going for a pre-board soft coup. That meeting is where she'll shape narrative, concerns, signals, patterns. You can't let that happen." "So what do I do?" I whispered. Marisol smiled slowly. "We build the trap." The words settled between us like a vow. She spun the laptop back toward me. "First, we're going to extract a version timeline showing every file she touched when she touched it and what keywords she added over time. Second, we gather counter-evidence, real feedback, real performance data. Third," she paused, eyes bright with strategy, "we get one solid witness who can confirm her surveys were leading and biased." My gut tightened. "Who?" She raised an eyebrow. "You already know." Jonah, design, PMs, all people she'd quietly tested her narrative on. But one name rose fast and clear. Lena, our director of customer success, the only person Eden hated losing arguments to. The one who'd once told me, "If she starts playing politics, I'll smell it first." "Call her," Marisol said, reading my face. "Now." I reached for my phone, pulse thrumming, the office suddenly alive with possibility. For the first time since this all began, I wasn't drowning. I was preparing. Lena picked up on the second ring, her voice sharp with that caffeine-charged morning energy she carried like an aura. "Hey, boss, you good?" Your text sounded not good. I glanced at Marisol, who mouthed speaker. I hit the button. "I need to ask you something," I said carefully, "and I need the truth even if it's messy." A pause, then the faint clatter of her closing an office door. Okay, hit me. Did Eden ask you to fill out any kind of leadership survey? Something about stress signals or alignment patterns? Lena let out a low whistle. Wow, so it's happening. My stomach tightened. What's happening? She asked me 2 weeks ago, Lena said. Came to my desk looking sympathetic, like she was checking on me. Then she slid a confidential culture check in my way. Questions were loaded as hell. Stuff like, have you noticed shifts in Alexis's emotional baseline under pressure? I handed it back and told her the only emotional shift I'd seen was her crying during QBR prep. Marisol burst out laughing under her breath. Perfect witness, she whispered. Lena continued. Next day I heard her asking Design the same thing. She's been fishing. Hard. My pulse thudded. If I asked you to put that in writing, would you? Absolutely, she said without hesitation. I knew something was off, and I don't like people weaponizing culture like a damn puppet show. Relief washed through me so strong my eyes stung. Thank you. You want me to come in? I met Marisol's eyes. She nodded. Yes, I said, as soon as you can. Give me 20. When I hung up, the clock on my monitor read 10:07. Barely 2 hours until Eden's culture alignment ambush. Marisol cracked her knuckles like she was limbering up. Good, we've got our witness. Now we just need to build your case. The next hour moved fast, intense, electric, focused. The office outside blurred into background noise. Chairs rolling, muted chatter, the intermittent hiss of the espresso machine. In here, it was quiet concentration. Watch this, Marisol said, pulling up the version timeline for Eden's folders. See this spike? She edited 4 documents within the same 30-minute window, right after sending that survey to the team. That's sequencing. She was shaping the data before she even collected it. I felt something shift inside me, something steady, something anchoring. So we show the board she pre-wrote the story. We do more than that, she clicked another panel. We show them you performed. That outcomes contradict her implications. Customer retention is strong. Engineering velocity up 13%. Attrition lowest quarter of the year. You have metrics. She has vibes. A knock landed on my door sharp, urgent. I tensed. Lena stepped in without waiting, hair slightly windblown, laptop bag slung over her shoulder. Okay, she said, closing the door behind her. Tell me who needs to be told and how loudly. Marisol grinned. Sit, you're going to help us build the counter-narrative. For the next half hour, Lena pulled up Slack messages, meeting notes, customer feedback, anything that reflected actual leadership behavior. Moments where I'd calmed tense calls, mediated conflicts, debriefed outages with clarity instead of panic, evidence of steadiness. This, she said, highlighting a message thread, is what real leadership looks like, not the garbage she's stitching together. By the time noon neared, we had 3 things Eden never expected. A paper trail disproving her, a witness confirming her methods, and a timeline revealing deliberate manipulation. Marisol shut her laptop with a soft click. You're ready. But my throat tightened as the realization hit. To win this, I'd have to walk into her meeting. And I'd have to let her talk first. The room was already half full when I walked in, chairs arranged in a loose circle, soft jazz humming from the speakers like Eden was hosting a mindfulness retreat instead of a political ambush. She stood near the whiteboard, posture perfect, her smile gentle in that way people mistake for kindness. A ceramic mug of mint tea steamed beside her. The moment she saw me, something flickered in her expression, surprise, then recalibration. She hadn't expected me to show up. Alexis, she said warmly, I wasn't sure you'd be joining. This is more of an informal alignment space. I took a seat near the front. I'm here. A few team leads exchanged glances, uncertain, uncomfortable. Eden gestured delicately toward them, palms open like she was blessing the room. Thank you all for making time, she began. As we prepare for tomorrow's board meeting, I wanted to check in on sentiment. Make sure we're supporting each other. Make sure no one is feeling strained. The way she said strained made my jaw tighten. She clicked her tablet, and a slide appeared on the wall. Team culture pulse, preliminary themes. Beneath it were 3 bullet points. Leadership volatility. Emotional inconsistency. Decision hesitation in critical phases. My stomach dropped, but not from shock this time, from recognition. These were her exact phrases from the drafts. "Let's talk about what we've been observing," Eden said. Openly, safely. Silence stretched. People shifted in their chairs. Someone coughed. Eden waited like a patient therapist. Finally, she turned to our design lead, Maya. "Anything you'd like to share?" Maya's eyes darted to me, then away. No. I mean, things are intense, but that's normal before a release." Eden nodded sympathetically. "Intensity is natural, but patterns are important." Patterns, that word again. Before she could call on anyone else, the door opened quietly. Lena slipped inside, gave me the slightest nod, then sat. Eden's smile tightened. "Glad you could join, Lena," she said. "We were just beginning." "Perfect timing then," Lena replied, crossing her legs. "Continue." Eden inhaled, recovering her rhythm. "As I was saying, this is a space to talk about any concerns, especially regarding leadership load." And then she pivoted her gaze to me with such deliberate softness it made my skin crawl. "This includes you too, Alexis. If you feel overwhelmed, it's okay to say so." I kept my face neutral. "I'll share when appropriate." A flicker of irritation cracked through her composure before she smoothed it away. She turned back to the group. "Anyone noticing shifts, emotional fluctuations, hesitation, anything you feel might impact stability?" This time, Lena spoke before anyone could inhale. "I have something," she said, her voice crisp. Eden brightened. "Please." Lena tilted her head slightly. "I'm noticing a pattern too, specifically leading questions." The room froze. Eden blinked. "I'm sorry." "You've been asking people here to rate Alexis's emotional baseline." Lena mimed air quotes with deliberate slowness. "You gave us surveys with preloaded narratives about volatility. That's not checking culture. That's framing." A murmur rippled across the room. Eden's smile faltered. "I think there's been a misunderstanding." "No," Lena cut in. "There hasn't. You asked us to document concerns we didn't have, and when we didn't give you what you wanted, you kept asking." I watched Eden's posture shift, shoulders rising, breath catching. Her hand tightened on her mug. "That's inaccurate," she said softly. "I was simply gathering data to support Alexis." "Oh," Lena's eyebrow arched, "because it looked like you were gathering data to undermine her." Eden's face went still, the kind of stillness that precedes a lie. I leaned forward slightly, voice calm. "If there's misunderstanding, Eden, this is your chance to clarify your process. Fully." She swallowed, glancing at the team, then back at me. For the first time since she'd walked into our company, she looked unsettled. I think we should move this offline," she murmured. "No," Lena said. "I think we're finally online." The room went silent, charged, heavy, waiting. This was the moment her narrative began to crack. And I wasn't going to let her seal the fracture. Her composure fractured, just for a second, but it was enough. A tiny tremor in her chin, a blink too slow. The kind of micro-expression people miss unless they're looking for it, and I was looking for everything. She shifted her weight, adjusting her silk blouse like the fabric itself might steady her. "This isn't the appropriate forum," she repeated, voice thinner this time. "Team-wide conversations can be easily misinterpreted." I kept my tone even. "Then help us interpret." A couple of people nodded. The air felt tight, like the whole room had leaned forward. Eden drew a breath, aiming for calm. "My intention was to support the organization. I gathered feedback the same way I always do, confidentially, respectfully, with the board's knowledge." I tilted my head slightly. "With the board's knowledge?" She hesitated, just a beat, but it was telling. "I provided preliminary themes. They rely on me for cultural insight." Lena exhaled a single sharp laugh. "Themes? You weren't gathering themes, you were building a case." Eden's eyes tightened. Lena, you're mischaracterizing. No, Lena said, leaning forward, elbows on her knees. You asked leading questions and then wrote up conclusions people never said. Maya lifted a hand timidly. Actually, I did feel weird about that survey, she murmured. Some of the questions sounded like they'd already made up their mind. Someone from engineering chimed in, voice low. Same. It felt like the answers didn't matter, only confirming the prompts. Eden's nostrils flared, too small an expression to call anger, but close. These tools are standard practice in high-growth environments. Marisol's words echoed in my mind. HR documentation must be contemporaneous, corroborated, and neutral. This was none of those. I kept my voice soft, careful. Eden, can you walk us through how you framed the surveys? Who approved the language? Her jaw flexed. The board encouraged us to monitor organizational strain. Monitoring is different from prompting, Lena said. Eden's gaze cut to her. With respect, you're not trained in culture diagnostics. Maybe not, Lena shot back, but I'm trained in when someone's trying to manipulate me. The room hummed with unspoken agreement. A flush crept up Eden's neck. She clasped her hands in front of her, grounding herself like she'd practiced it in a mirror. I think we're losing sight of the intention here. This was meant to safeguard our culture. I've noticed inconsistencies in how Alexis handles pressure and... Stop! The word slipped out before I could soften it. My voice wasn't loud, but the firmness cut the room clean. Every eye turned to me. I stood slowly, heart pounding but breath steady. If you have concerns about my leadership, you bring them to me, directly, privately, not through coded surveys, not through undocumented conversations, and definitely not through unvetted reports to the board. Eden swallowed, throat bobbing. I had to protect the team. From what? I asked quietly. From success metrics trending up, from the lowest attrition we've had since founding, or from a CEO you decided was easier to replace than communicate with. Whispers fluttered around us. Her mask slipped, just an inch, enough to see the calculation behind the comm. You're being unfair, she said, voice brittle. I've supported you through everything. You've engineered a narrative for months, I said. A narrative that doesn't match data, behavior, or feedback, and you didn't expect anyone to connect the dots. Her breath quickened. You're twisting this. Lena leaned back, arms crossed. Feels like you were twisting first. The silence that followed was taut, electric, minutes stretched into seconds. Eden looked around the room, searching for an ally. No one met her eyes. For the first time, I saw fear flicker across her face. She knew. The story she spent months constructing, carefully, quietly, meticulously, was finally unraveling. And I wasn't done. Eden didn't sit. She hovered, breath shallow, fingers tightening around the edge of her tablet like it might anchor her. The room was starting to fracture around her, whispers under breaths, uneasy glances, people shifting in their seats. She could feel the tide turning, and she hated it. That was when she made her move. I think, she said, lifting her chin with a shaky imitation of steadiness, we should table this. Emotions are high. There's clearly some misunderstanding. We can reset later. No, I said softly. We won't reset, we'll clarify. Her eyes narrowed a fraction, but she forced her voice gentle. Alexis, if you need space. I don't, I replied. I need transparency. Something flickered then, true irritation, sharp and naked. I'd never seen that version of her before. It told me everything. Before she could respond, my phone buzzed in my pocket. A single vibration, our agreed-upon signal. Marisol. She was ready. I stood, smoothing my hands against my skirt, grounding myself. Everyone, thank you for being open. I'm going to step out for a moment. Feel free to take a break. Half the room looked relieved. The other half looked like they were witnessing the prelude to a storm. Eden watched me like a hawk tracking a threat. The moment I stepped into the hallway, Marisol emerged from the small focus room across from mine. Her laptop was open in her hands, screen glowing with the evidence she'd compiled. We got it, she whispered. Everything. My pulse jumped. What did you find? She angled the screen toward me, her voice low but fierce. Version manipulation across multiple documents, repeated edits immediately after meetings with board members, survey drafts created before she issued them, and, she clicked a file, a private note she thought she deleted. It loaded slowly, like it was dragging its own guilt with it. A single line burned across the screen. Grace wants proof she can use. Build the case quietly. Prioritize emotional volatility framing. My stomach twisted. She wrote this. Yep, Marisol said. Metadata confirms her device, her user, her timestamp. She saved it before deleting. Amateurs forget that cloud autosave is forever. I stared at the words, heat rising behind my eyes, not tears, just the kind of rage that crystallizes into clarity. She coordinated with Grace directly. And Thomas, Marisol added, not explicitly in writing, but the pattern's clear. He viewed every version she updated within an hour of edits. That's collusion by proximity. A cold, steady calm settled into me. This is enough. This is checkmate, she said. We stepped into my office and closed the door. My hands were steady now, sharper, focused. We laid out the evidence on my screen, timeline reconstruction, survey drafts, access logs, contradictory performance metrics, Lena's written statement describing the leading survey. Marisol exhaled. You ready for the last piece? I nodded. She pulled up one final document. This, she said, tapping the screen, is the part she didn't expect anyone to see. It was a screenshot, captured automatically by our system during an export. A comment bubble from Eden on one of her drafts. If we move before the CEO secures Series B, we protect the board from unnecessary risk. My breath caught. She wasn't just undermining me, she was timing it. To replace you before your valuation jumped, Marisol said, before your negotiating power increased. The realization hit like a physical blow. She debuilt the narrative. She debuilt the case. She debuilt the timing. All that was left was tomorrow. I closed the laptop gently. Tomorrow wasn't going to be her coup. It was going to be her collapse. The boardroom always felt colder than the rest of the office, like the air conditioning was set specifically to keep people disciplined, alert, a little on edge. By the time I walked in the next morning, laptop tucked under my arm, I could already feel that sharp chill seeping into my arms. The long walnut table gleamed under the recessed lights, and Grace and Thomas sat at opposite ends like judges waiting to preside over a verdict they'd already rehearsed. Eden was there too. She sat 2 seats from Grace, posture perfect, hands folded neatly on the table. Her eyes flicked up when I entered, polite smile, modest nod, the picture of professionalism. If you didn't know what she'd done, you'd never suspect a thing. She'd chosen a pale gray suit today, one shade softer than authority, one shade firmer than innocence. Good morning, she said, serene. I took my seat. My heart wasn't calm, but it was steady, heavier than before, anchored by the folders pulsing inside my laptop. Evidence glowed behind the screen like a quiet engine. Grace cleared her throat, shuffling her papers. Before we begin, I wanted to frame today's conversation. We've received preliminary cultural insights that suggest there may be leadership strain emerging at the executive level. I didn't let her finish. Which leadership strain are you referring to? I said, tone mild. The one Eden fabricated or the one she coached you on using biased surveys? Thomas shifted in his seat. Grace's eyes sharpened. Eden's hands tightened a fraction on her notebook. Grace folded her arms. Alexis, let's maintain professionalism. Agreed, I said. Let us be professional, let's use real data. I turned my laptop toward the projector. With a small click, the first panel lit up the wall. A version timeline, Eden's files, each edit marker glinting like neon breadcrumbs. Her breath caught. She masked it quickly, but not quickly enough. Thomas frowned. What is this? It's the editing history, I said, of the leadership concerns, documentation Eden submitted to the board. Eden's voice came gentle, almost tender. "Alexis, I understand you're feeling defensive." "This," I said calmly, "is V12, created before any of the incidents you claim to be responding to." I clicked again. "Here's the file you edited the morning after you asked my design lead to fill out a survey she found disturbing. Slide. And here's the file you modified exactly 6 minutes after meeting privately with Grace." Another slide, another timestamp. Another cut into her narrative. A quiet rustle rippled across the table. Thomas leaned forward. "Is this accurate?" Grace's face remained perfectly still, but a faint line formed between her brows. Eden inhaled slowly. "These are normal iterations." "They're not normal," I said, "and they're not neutral. HR documentation must be contemporaneous, corroborated, and unbiased. These files weren't built from feedback, they were built before feedback. You didn't gather insight, Eden, you manufactured it." Her lips parted, but no words emerged. I clicked again. The next slide displayed the deleted note. The OneCloud autosave caught mid-keystroke. "Grace wants proof she can use. Build the case quietly. Prioritize emotional volatility framing." A sharp silence fell. You could feel the temperature drop another 10 degrees. Grace stiffened, a flicker of alarm breaking through her mask. "I never." "This," I said evenly, "was captured automatically. Your name is right there." Eden's face drained of color. Thomas turned slowly toward her. "Did you write this?" She blinked. I don't recall typing that exact." "Is it your device?" I asked. "Yes, but..." "Your login." "Yes, but..." "Your timestamp." She swallowed. "Yes." "So you wrote it." Her jaw clenched. It was an exploratory thought. "No," I said. "It was a strategy." Lena's statement flashed next. Her testimony about the leading surveys, the scripted prompts, the quiet pushing. "And here," I said, "is corroboration from team members you pressured." The room buzzed with a low, stunned murmur. Eden finally exhaled, a shaky, brittle sound. "I was trying to protect the culture, I thought." I leaned in slightly. "You weren't protecting the culture. You were protecting a storyline, one aimed at removing me before the Series B." Her eyes flashed, wounded. "You're twisting this." "No," Thomas said quietly. "I don't think she is." Grace let out a slow, icy breath. "Eden, is there anything you want to clarify before we proceed?" Eden's veneer finally cracked. Her voice trembled. I was doing what I believed was necessary. Things were slipping. Investors expressed concerns. I thought if I guided the narrative." "Guided," I repeated softly. "You engineered a coup." Her shoulders sagged. For the first time since I'd known her, she looked small, fragile, caught. Thomas turned to me. "Alexis, thank you for bringing this forward. We'll need a moment in executive session." Grace nodded stiffly. "Please step outside while we review." I stood, gathering my laptop with hands that were no longer trembling. As I reached the door, I felt Eden's eyes on me. Wide, dark, pleading, furious, broken. I didn't turn back. Because I wasn't leaving as a CEO waiting to be replaced. I was leaving as the one holding the truth. The hallway outside the boardroom felt unnaturally bright, the kind of clinical white that makes you squint even when you're not exhausted. I paced in slow, controlled steps, every inhale deliberate, every exhale tight. My body was buzzing, half adrenaline, half the numbness that follows a direct hit you somehow survived. From behind the frosted glass, faint murmurs rose and fell. They were too quiet to make out, but the cadence told a story. Grace speaking sharply, Thomas responding more measured, someone tapping a pen against the table in rapid, anxious bursts. And Eden, if she was speaking at all, was doing it softly now, without the calm authority she'd once wielded like a crown. I leaned against the opposite wall, arms folded, trying to ground myself. My reflection in the glass panel looked unfamiliar, tired eyes, jaw clenched, shoulders squared like someone preparing for impact even after the strike had passed. I wasn't shaking anymore, but the memory of it still tugged in my muscles. Footsteps echoed down the hall. I looked up and saw Marisol approaching, a coffee in each hand. She passed one to me without a word. "You alive?" she asked. "Barely." My voice came out lower than I meant. "They're in executive session." She nodded. "Good, that means they're scared." "Of what?" I whispered. "Liability," she said. "Exposure, optics, pick your poison." She studied my face. "You did exactly what you needed to do." I took a long sip of the coffee, its bitterness grounding. What if they still move against me? "Then they do it knowing they're firing the only adult in the building," she said, shrugging. "And with documentation that could bury them in governance violations. But they won't." She paused, then added, "Not after what you showed them." A sharp sound cut through the hall, someone raising their voice behind the glass. I froze. Marisol's eyes flicked toward the boardroom door. "That's Thomas. He's rattled." "How can you tell?" She smirked. "Rattled men repeat themselves. He's on his third round of something." We stood in silence for a moment, listening to the muffled tension. My stomach tightened again, not with fear this time, but with something heavier: grief. I hadn't realized until now how much I'd trusted Eden, how much space I'd given her, how much influence she'd collected by making herself indispensable. "I let her get close," I whispered. "You trusted her," Marisol corrected gently. "That's not a flaw, that's leadership." Before I could respond, the boardroom door opened. Grace stepped out first, her posture stiff and controlled. Thomas followed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. Eden trailed behind them, and one look told me everything. Her eyes were glossy, her shoulders hunched, her entire presence smaller, like she was curling inward around the weight of consequences she hadn't prepared for. Grace cleared her throat. "Alexis," she said briskly, "please join us." My pulse thrummed, but I straightened and walked past Eden, who kept her gaze fixed on the floor. When I entered the room, the air felt warmer, like the temperature had risen in the fallout. "Please sit," Grace said. I did. Thomas folded his hands. "We've concluded our review." Silence stretched, taut as wire. Then he looked me in the eye. "We owe you an apology." Something in my chest cracked, not loudly, not visibly, just a small internal fracture where tension had been holding me upright. Grace nodded stiffly. "We did not have the full picture. Eden's documentation was—" She hesitated, choosing words that wouldn't indict her own judgment. "Compromised." My breath caught, slow and careful. Thomas continued, "We will be terminating her employment, effective immediately." I didn't exhale, not yet. "And you," Grace said, "retain full authority as CEO, with our unanimous support." The room blurred for a second, edges softening as my lungs finally unlocked. But before relief could settle, Thomas added quietly, "There is still the matter of rebuilding trust, both directions." I nodded. "I know." And I did, because even as victory settled around me, its cost sat heavy in my bones. Grace closed her folder. "We'll brief the rest of the board shortly. For now, thank you for bringing this forward." As they gathered their things, I stayed seated, staring at the grain of the table, the same table I'd once been afraid I wouldn't sit at again. It wasn't triumph I felt. It was survival. And survival always comes with a price. The boardroom emptied in fragments, Grace leaving first with clipped steps, Thomas pausing long enough to give me a tight, genuine nod, and Eden drifting out last. She didn't look at me. Not once. Her shoulders were rounded, her breath shaky, her careful posture, once her armor, now just something she couldn't maintain. When the door finally clicked shut behind her, the silence that followed felt too big for one room. I stayed seated for a long moment, palms flat on the cool table, breathing in slow, steady increments. The air smelled faintly of the mint tea Eden had left behind, the steam curling upward like a ghost of the story she'd tried to write about me. My chest rose and fell, hollow with relief and heavy with something more complicated. I wasn't happy. I wasn't victorious. I wasn't even angry anymore. I was exhausted. The kind of exhaustion that lives in your bones. Eventually, I stood. My knees felt weak, the adrenaline shaking itself loose now that it had no job left to do. I stepped out into the hallway, the soft carpet muffling my steps, and found Marisol leaning against the wall, arms crossed, one brow raised. "Well," she asked. "It's over," I said quietly. She studied my face, then nodded once. "Good, and congrats." "It doesn't feel like a victory." "It won't," she said gently. "Not for a while." We walked together down the hall, the buzz of the office rising around us. Slack pings, someone laughing near the kitchen, printers rumbling. Normal sounds. Life moving forward. But for me, something had shifted irrevocably. At my office door, I paused. Through the glass, I could see my desk, the streaks of morning light stretching across it, and the folder Eden had left days ago, still sitting exactly where I'd found it, a symbol of everything that almost happened. Marisol put a hand on my shoulder. "Go home, sleep, breathe." I shook my head. "I need to talk to the team." "Not today," she said. "You'll speak from adrenaline or emptiness. Neither is fair to you." I closed my eyes, absorbing her words. She was right. Healing doesn't happen in the hour after the wound closes. I grabbed my bag, shut off my monitor, and walked out of the office for the first time in days, feeling the weight of my own footsteps. The street outside smelled like exhaust and warm concrete and something sweet from a bakery down the block. The sun felt too bright and too warm on my face. Life continued. But that night, alone in my apartment, everything caught up to me. The quiet pressed in. The memory of Eden's soft smile and sharpened intentions flickered in my chest. I lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, replaying the moment she'd first said, "We're protecting the culture." And I whispered into the quiet, "Protecting it from who?" Weeks passed before the tremors stopped waking me in the night. Before I could sit in a meeting without scanning faces for hidden narratives. Before I could trust my own instincts again. Trauma doesn't leave when the danger does. It lingers, reshaping you. But something else grew in that space too. Strength, boundary, a clarity I didn't know I was missing. We rebuilt, slowly, carefully, with transparency that was uncomfortable at times but honest in ways we'd never reached before. When we landed our Series B 6 months later, $15, $6 million from new partners who believed in our vision, I felt a pride that was quieter, steadier, deeper. Eden disappeared from the industry grapevine. Last I heard, she was doing freelance organizational diagnostics for a mid-tier startup in Portland. No equity, no team, no influence. Her LinkedIn went dark soon after. Some nights I still wake at 3 a.m., heart pounding, wondering if I missed something. Some whisper, some shift in tone, some sign of a betrayal I convinced myself wasn't real. The body remembers threats long after the mind files them away. But then I think about the people who stood with me, the truth we uncovered, the fact that I am still here, leading, building, breathing. And I exhale. Because I survived, something meant to unmake me. And if you've stayed with me through this, if you've ever felt someone quietly rewriting your story while smiling in your face, then you understand why I had to tell it. Not for revenge, not for triumph, but because knowing someone else understands. That's what kept me standing on the nights I couldn't sleep.